Welcome. Welcome to a new story. Welcome to a day unwritten. We gather to speak of possibility. We remember the losses, and we celebrate the victories. We embrace the possible over the probable, weaving a story of hope. Join us in the new story. Join us in the day unwritten. Join us in the future of possibility. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. It's good to be with you today as we embark on this next chapter of our journeys together. I have to say, one of the best parts of being a UU minister that is in a committed relationship with another UU minister, as many of you know, is that you end up with this built-in editor, whether you want it or not, which mostly usually I do. All right. So I delivered a sermon a few weeks back, and Rev D watched the recordings. And she said, "Your preaching is improving." Thank you. But she said, "But you'd be even better if you told more stories." And now, in my defense, I already knew that the sermon she was offering this advice on had been a little too heady. I knew it. But I knew she was right. Because we come together to discuss each Sunday is not science, it's not technology. And there's a place for facts and figures. But ultimately what we're doing together on most Sundays is trying to make meaning. And story is the primary vehicle humans have always used to make meaning. I know that there are so many individual stories in this room on any given Sunday. Successful career stories, stories of overcoming challenges, stories of becoming empty nesters and having to manage that transition, stories of settling into life and raising children together, stories of bodies that work in different ways than they used to, stories of bodies that are fighting off diseases, and stories of triumph over adversity. Then there's a whole nother limitless well of stories about what's happening out there in the world, about politics, about climate change, about changing demographics, about artificial intelligence and what that's going to do for us or to us. Stories about resilience and hope. And all of these stories will combine to influence the next chapters of this community story. Who will be inspired to keep the flame lit in this community? How will this community need to adapt what it does to remain vibrant as the world changes around it? So many questions. And we're going to use our time today to reflect on that stuff a little bit. So, show of hands, how many here already have a practice where at the end of each year you take stock of that year and you reflect upon the year that just passed, you think about the lessons you've learned, where you are in the arc of your story, of your larger story, and where you hope your story will go next? How many people block out actual time to do that? All right, one, I'd say about a quarter. Okay. So, I know everyone comes here in a different place with different needs. And I really wanted to set this time aside today for busy folks. Or for the it's hard to carve out time to think about myself folks. Any of those folks here probably? Yeah. I know there are a lot of you out there. And where else in the world are you just encouraged to take some time to put everything down and just reflect upon your life for a stretch, right? Doesn't happen very often. So that's what we're going to do here today. And I'm going to give you two different options for how you use this time. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. This is your time. I'm going to give you two different things you can think of. And if you think of the first one and you get through that, you can always just transition into the second one. So the first thing you might choose to consider is anything, if you haven't already, anything you really want to try to leave behind in the last year. This is kind of a New Year's transition-y service. So to just close that last chapter, so to speak, maybe it's an unhealthy habit that you've committed to change for 2025. Maybe it's a memory you'd like to put behind you. Maybe it's some less than helpful self-talk that you know that you're done with and you need to try to cast off. Maybe it's a relationship that is no longer serving you. If you decide to go in this direction, I'm going to invite you to come up in the front in a few minutes, and we're going to do a small releasing ritual together. You can come to the front, write a few words that symbolize that story of what you want to leave behind, and we have some flash paper, and we can send that off into the ether with a fire. So that's a good, our minds really benefit from ritual because that's a way that your mind can actually say, okay, I want to release this, and now I've tangibly released it. It lets your mind think you've actually done something. So if there's something you'd like to leave behind, I'm going to invite you to come forward once we transition in that reflective time to just let stuff go. So that's option one. Now, others of you may be just ready to look forward, and that's always important work as well. Adrienne Marie Brown recently said, "We have to attend to the aspect of humanity that thinks of ourselves as having some kind of destiny, some kind of purpose, some kind of calling for being here." And she says, I think if we don't create such stories of purpose, we cede that territory to the purposes of capitalism and the manifest destiny of colonial efforts. If we don't have a purpose, we cede that territory to the purposes of capitalism. That's pretty heady stuff. So if you are the main character in the story of your life, what is that character's purpose? Big, heady thing. You didn't think you were going to have to think this hard today. What is your purpose? That is an enormous question, especially if you haven't given it too much thought at this point. What is the purpose of your life? Do you know? Have you known for a long time? If you used to know, has it changed? If you do know, how well is your life currently aligned with that purpose? Are you not sure anymore? Has your life changed? Do you need a new purpose? If this question is a new one for you, it's unlikely you'll find your purpose in the next 5 minutes, although I know from experience it is possible. One of the nice things about leaving space for people is sometimes the muse just lands on your shoulder and you go, wait a minute, what was that? Where did that come from? That's a whole question about, we could ask all kinds of questions about that. So just know that coming up with the right answer isn't the purpose of this exercise. The purpose today is to simply sit with the question. If you come up with something, great. If you don't, just a prompt to know that maybe there's some more thinking to do about that question. So if you already have a clear answer to that question, great. Take the time to consider how well you're aligning with it and see if there are any adjustments to be made. What if you're just not sure? You could use this time to play with options. What do you want to do this year, right? Maybe your purpose is to be a great parent, or to increase your impact in the success of this community, or to become a mentor. Or maybe your purpose is just to enjoy the ride. Maybe you've already done all your purpose work, and maybe you just want to hang back and enjoy the ride. That's a good purpose. It's okay. This is your life. There are no wrong answers. But if we don't ask the question, we certainly do run the risk of getting to the end of our story and realizing that we have never truly listened to our own story, and we've allowed our tale to be written by someone else. I actually did a bit of this work last year, and I can tell you what emerged for me. I wrote down, I create a world filled with joy by creating safe places to play. And for those of you that have been working with me over the past year, I hope that you will see that my actions generally do line up with those intentions. Try to make this into a safe place where we can come together and play and maybe learn some things and maybe change some things and maybe grow. So, if you have decided to use this time to look forward, I offer this prompt to help you along. I create a world that is blank by being this, by doing this. And again, if this doesn't work for you, then you're going to have 5 minutes to just see what emerges. Okay? You all have pen and paper. If you don't, raise your hand. We'll get you some. And remember, if you have something that you want to release, come forward. We'll write it on this special paper up here, and we'll send it off to the universe. So if your spirit calls you to think about the future, stay at your seat and ponder your purpose. Use this format or go in your own direction. This is your time. Use it in whatever way would be most helpful for you. And while we're reflecting together, Tracy will play a bit of background music to help fill the space. So if you want to let something go, come forward. If you want to think in your seats, do that as well. All right, how was that? I know it was terrifying for the folks that came up here, but that was kind of cool. Considering what's not working in our lives or what our ultimate purpose is isn't something most of us do on the regular. And it's almost countercultural in some ways. But it is one of the unique things that a church like this encourages us to do. And it's really okay if you weren't able to come up with anything. It was only 5 minutes. We haven't even had our coffee yet. It's okay. And this year we're going to have lots more opportunities to talk story together. And we're going to keep talking about what this faith means to us. Even if you've been here a long time, I hope you'll join us at second hour next week when we offer UU 101 course for new folks. Because it's not just for new folks. Unitarian Universalism is a living faith tradition, ever changing and adapting, just like each of us. So I do hope you'll join us next week for that. In the coming year, I'm really going to be inviting us all to re-examine our stories about who we are individually, about what this community is collectively, and about what this faith tradition is, and what it means to each of us, how it informs our lives, and how we will align our efforts because of all of that. So buckle up, friends. I can't wait to see how our collective stories unfold in this coming year. There are so many adventures yet to come. May we have the courage to speak or write the stories within us that need to be told, the stories that make up our lives. May we listen with a loving mind and heart to the stories of others' lives, others here in this church, and others in our wider community and world. Let us choose with care the stories that we teach our children, remembering that all of our stories have power, and that all of our stories are connected, for all of life is one. In the name of all that is sacred in these gathered hearts, may it be so. Amen. Beloveds, it is so good to be starting a new story this year. Not that the old story last year wasn't so bad, but new beginnings offer opportunities always for new beginnings and new ways of being. I am excited to be a part of this community. It's been amazing to get to know each of y'all's stories that I've gotten to interact with over the last year and a half or so, and I look forward to continuing those stories. The good parts, the bad parts, the sad parts, the happy parts, they're all parts of our story, and they are all held by this community. So I am glad that our story will continue on. And we'll be having coffee in the social hall. I'd be really interested to hear what people came up with for their stories. If anybody came up with purposes in that 5 minutes of amazement, who knows? Maybe it did. Maybe it prompted you thinking. Always want to hear that. And keep talking about that stuff. Figure out what we're here for, because that's the work we're going to be doing this year. Go in peace. We'll see you soon.